Lord, make us instruments of your peace.
Where there is hatred, let us sow love.
Where there is injury, pardon.
Where there is doubt,
Faith. Where there is despair, hope.
Where there is darkness,
light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master,
grant that we may not so much seek
to be consoled as to console,
to be understood as to understand,
to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive,
it is in pardoning that we are pardoned,
and it is in dying
that we are born to eternal life.
Amen.
WESN.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today. Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
WESN.
Hello there, and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the program. Well, the Minister of Finance, in a post to social media last week, indicated that VAT refunds will actually be repaid in the form of VAT bonds for fiscal 2025. However, in the instance of SMEs, the government, which promised via the Minister of Finance's budget proposal last year, indicated that by December 31st, VAT refunds will be repaid in cash. That has not happened. The Minister of Finance has now indicated that the date is by January 31st. 6,000 SMEs plus across Trinidad and Tobago will be repaid in cash, over $691 million. But the Minister of Finance went on to state the reason for the delay is because of cash flow issues, not bureaucracy. And given our sluggish oil and gas sector in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, well, it's not surprising at all. But we're joined this morning by Opposition Senator Damian Leiter to discuss this issue. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning, Keaton, and good morning to all your viewers and listeners at WESN. Content Capital.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Content Capital this morning, Senator Leiter. Let's start this conversation by focusing on the announcement, actually, that SMEs will be the priority target. Over 6,000 to be targeted, with the 691 million TT dollars to be paid out. Surely this is good news for this sector and, in fact, stimulates it with some much-needed cash flow.
Well, I mean, look, you know, Keaton, I think that this is a government that's being disingenuous. This VAT problem has been a problem going on now for years under this government, and it's getting worse and worse as the years go by. I want to remind the population that it was in March in 2023 when we were able to corner the government and get the minister to admit there was close to $7.8 billion in VAT refunds owing to manufacturers and businesses throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, under that level of pressure, the minister, at that point in time in the budget debate, announced a $3 billion bond, that he will be raising a $3 billion bond to help pay this, as well as to contribute between $1 to $2 billion from the consolidated fund to clear off a lot of these VAT refunds. Now, the reality of the situation, what happened? Well, what happened was the $3 billion bond was raised, and I want to remind everyone that a bond is not taking money from the consolidated fund. A bond is yet another loan, once again, that has to be repaid. Because once he paid these bonds to the businesses or the manufacturers, they were then traded into the banks, and the banks would then hold this $3 billion at 3.15% interest per annum, maturing in 3 years. What does that mean? It means the taxpayers, you, me, all the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago would have to pay an interest rate of some $283 million at the end of 3 years for this PNM's mismanagement of money. Now, what do I mean by this PNM's mismanagement of money? I find it an absolute poor excuse and just once again another example of the incompetence and the inability of this government to manage the finances and the affairs of this country. This Minister of Finance's constant excuses. Because you see, you have to understand the way this VAT refund thing works, right? Now, the government, when manufacturers are importing products into the country or raw materials into the country, they are paying VAT upfront to the government at the port. The government is receiving this VAT into their hands and into the consolidated fund. And when the manufacturers now export their products to international markets, which they cannot charge VAT on their goods, this is where they would now seek their VAT refund. That's the case in many cases, right? This is the vast majority of the VAT refunds, and they seek to get back their VAT in this manner. Now, the government, if they practice proper financial prudence and ensured proper financial management, would have the money there in the consolidated fund to be able to pay the VAT refunds. But that is why but what we have seen happen is that the government has neglected these manufacturers, refused to pay them back their VAT refunds over, some of them 6 months, over a year waiting for their VAT refunds. And we ask the question, why? Why are they not paying it back? And the minister says cash flow. Why is there no cash there? And what we are seeing is they are using these VAT payments that should be going back as VAT refunds almost as $1 billion interest-free loan to the government from manufacturers to pay for their wanton wastage, to pay for their phantom projects, and especially now to pay for their increasing or their record high national debt, which we've seen climb to $141 billion, upwards from $76 billion under Kamala Prasad to now, almost 10 years later, $141 billion in national debt. And that is what they are using these monies for, instead of paying back the VAT refunds.
Senator Knight, in that regard, it's very difficult to digest the fact that a Minister of Finance has stated that it's cash flow that's the issue. I mean, that does not necessarily all go well and does not inspire confidence in any sense when it comes to doing business. However, whilst I understand that is difficult to digest, is this explanation as per the reason there are cash flow issues, which is our declining oil and gas sector. It's been sluggish. Let's understand that. Is that acceptable? Should that be acceptable? We are aware of issues surrounding our oil and gas sector in Trinidad. In fact, it's manufacturing that has propped up our economy.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because that's another poor excuse. Because as I said to you just a moment ago, these manufacturers are paying their VAT up front at the port. The government is receiving this money in advance. It's there in their hands. They cannot blame declining revenues of oil and gas on the cash flow problem to be able to pay back. This is an accounting problem. This is an incompetence problem. And this is a problem of using monies that does not belong to you, which belongs to manufacturers, to spend on the running of your country, and again on wanton wastage and all these phantom projects we see the government undertaking for billions of dollars when they don't have the money. You ever heard the saying, champagne tastes and bare pocket? Well, if you are getting declined revenues in oil and gas, then you have to cut back on some of those champagne projects that have wanton wastage involved in it, and in many cases corruption, and you have to focus your monies where it's necessary. And let me say this, when I tell you that the money doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to manufacturers by law. The law states, the VAT Act states, that if by the government by law is obligated to pay back VAT refunds to manufacturers, and if they go beyond 6 months, if they are owing the manufacturers beyond 6 months, every month after that, they are obligated to pay 1% interest to manufacturers on every month thereafter. Now, I questioned the Minister of Finance whether that is being done, and I got a sort of a runaround answer, so I'm still not clear. But I'll tell you what, if you are late paying your VAT, from the very first day, you get a fine and you get interest from the very first date. And I'm saying that the government by law needs to manage the money better in the consolidated fund and give the manufacturers back their money. Listen, it was $7.8 billion owing in March. They went and they did a bond for $3 billion in 2024, right? I don't think they gave it much from the consolidated fund. Do you know, when I asked the question in the Senate, as of March 2024, this is a year later, where are the VAT refunds as of today? The minister's answer to me was $6.54 billion. That was in March. So they were climbing back up to that $7.8 billion figure that they were in 2023, climbing right back up. One would have thought that after paying the $3 billion and the $2 billion that they were promised to have paid from the consolidated fund, which I'm certain they did not pay, and I'm going to ask that question, that would have been $5 billion. That would have taken down the VAT refunds substantially, but it's climbed back up to $6.54 billion. I sincerely believe we are almost a year later. I shudder to think what that number is. I will be asking that question in the Senate, but we see the Minister of Finance coming again with another $3 billion bond, another loan. We saw he now announced that in the budget debate, not just a tweet, but in his budget debate, he announced another $3 billion bond coming, which is another $283 million that the citizens, so citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, have to find almost $600 million, over $500 million to taxpayers' money to fund interest on bonds, to pay VAT because of this government's delinquency to do so. And when the government does, and when you take $6.54 billion out of the system, cash flow out of the system, the government wants to talk about cash flow. What about the cash flow of the manufacturers? Because what you're doing essentially, when you take your interest-free $6.54 billion interest-free loan from manufacturers, is you're taking liquidity out of their coffers. So their ability to expand, their ability to create employment, and we've already seen that this government, under their tenure, has lost 65,000 jobs. According to the CSO, they have lost 65,000 jobs. But how do you expect to create jobs, especially in the private sector, when you remove $6.54 billion from the coffers of the manufacturers? They're enabled to, they would like to expand, they don't have the money to do so. They want to employ more people through the expansion, they don't have the ability to do so. They want to export more into the international market so we can get some foreign exchange that has been dwindling and becoming less and less, so that when you, Keaton, go into the bank to try to get some US cash to travel, you can get $200 and $300. And before we forget, I want to also tell you what this $3 billion bond is doing to our foreign exchange in this country, or the worsening of our foreign exchange in this country.
Well, please do. Please proceed with that. That's a very important point.
So the Minister of Finance, so let me tell you, in trying to fix a problem that they created, they want us to pat them on the back. So I see some of the chambers of commerce saying, "Pepe Pure, thank you, Massa Inbert, for paying the SMEs first, and then hopefully eventually it'll get to us." Look, the bottom line is this. The Minister of Finance admitted in the last budget debate in 2024, he admitted that the last $3 billion bond did impact negatively the foreign exchange in this country. And he explained why, and I can explain why as well. He admitted that of the $3 billion, 80% of that, or $2.4 billion, was paid to the energy sector, to the upstreamers, who, as you know, export their products for United States dollars. Now, these upstreamers, or the energy companies, bring the foreign exchange back into Trinidad. They change a portion of it with the central bank for TT dollars to pay their local expenditure, staff, rent, operational expenditure, etc. Now, when you've come with $2.4 billion and you have flooded these energy sector companies with TT dollars in one big swoop like that, and of course they all run off and change the bonds with the bank very quickly for TT dollars, what do you think happens? They no longer have to change their foreign exchange or their US dollars to find TT dollars to pay their local expenditure. So essentially what you've done is, by providing this huge repayment in TT dollars back to this 80% energy sector, what you've done is you've removed almost $350 million US dollars from the system. Money that would no longer need to be changed with the central bank to pay for local expenditure. So he's coming now again to do the same $3 billion, and he admitted this was a problem. If you go back to the Hansard, you will hear where the Minister of Finance admitted that it caused a problem. But here he is, coming back again for another $3 billion bond, for another $283 million interest rate that the taxpayers will pay, to remove another 350 million US circulating from the system.
In relation to the example that you just used, do you think that the Minister of Finance's proposal to tax these companies in US dollars rather than TT dollars is possibly a solution to this problem of which you've pointed out?
Well, I mean, look, any amount of US dollars we can get in addition we're happy for, right? I mean, I don't want to. You see, the issue is here. He is trying to find a solution for a problem that he is creating. The problem would not exist to begin with if the Minister of Finance simply ensure that he managed the monies in the consolidated fund properly to ensure that companies seeking their VAT refunds are paid back in a timely basis. Now, the various chambers of commerce on many occasions had indicated different types of solutions. One of those solutions was for the government to keep a separate fund for VAT refunds. If the private sector and if the private sector is such an important part of taxation, the energy companies, the private sector companies, if they are such a major component, and they are the largest component to the revenues of Trinidad and Tobago, then you should be treating them with courtesy. You should be on your bended knees to these companies to ensure that they can continue growing, to be able to grow your nation. And at the end of the day, by withholding these VAT refunds, you are stifling these companies. You are causing an ease of doing business to worsen in this country. And that is why we've seen companies like Ansar Metal, companies like Lever Brothers shut down their manufacturing operations. 1/3 of the Point Lisas industrial estate shut their doors because the ease of doing business is getting worse. They're not getting back their VAT refunds. They can't get foreign exchange. The chambers have clamored and said, listen, Minister, keep these VAT funds separate and apart and stop allowing it to be muddled in the consolidated fund, whereas we see, even the blind could see, this government using monies for phantom projects and wanton wastage. And
What
corruption.
phantom projects, Senator Leiter, what phantom projects are you referring to?
Well, when you hear about a highway being built in the middle of a forest, right, that is supposedly going to take us to the promised land of a port in Toko a promise that has never come to fruition in the 10 years. This government has had 10 years, and every budget coming back in 10 years talking about a port in Toko. And they started building road. They started paving road in the forest. Mashing up our wildlife, mashing up forest reserves, right? And we see highway drop. Where is that highway now? Who's driving on that highway? That's just one project. Right down to as little as spending $3 million on paintings. I mean, do you want me to go on and on and on? I can go from $3 million in paintings all the way to millions of dollars in highway that not being used. I mean, listen, we don't have the time, because I know I only have a short time with you. I don't have on our platform, I will speak about the wastage of the money. But what I want to say is that if the government expects that manufacturers in this country are going to pay their VAT refunds on a timely basis, their VAT owing on a timely basis, going to pay their corporate tax on a timely basis, going to pay their green fund levy and business levy, all these taxes, tax upon tax upon tax that the government has placed upon this net of businesses, right? Without trying to expand that net, but this net of businesses, right? If they are expecting these companies to do so, then they must also stop being hypocrites and start paying VAT refunds back on a timely basis so that these companies will have positive cash flows, unlike the government, who is now indicating a negative cash flow because of wastage and mismanagement.
Is there a need for for the business sector and quite possibly business chambers who are there to advocate on behalf of businesses to be more vocal on these issues? For the large part, they have remained rather quiet. They have now and again raised the issues of VAT refunds, but for the large part, they've remained quiet. Does that suggest that, well, why? Well, why is that taking place?
You know, Keaton, when we see a government that continues to trample on our constitution, when we see a government that continues to pass legislation that impact through simple majority, might I add, that impacts the lives and livelihoods of people of Trinidad and Tobago, when we see a government that has been vindictive, that has gone after their political rivals, what happens is you find that this government, over the past 10 years, have almost scared business people into their corner, have put them into a corner, frightened to react, in fear of being victimized, in fear of being being classed as colluding with the opposition. So many of these chambers, now at the end of the day, a chamber of commerce should be clamoring for betterment, but they need to be very cautious how they say things. At the end of the day, they are apolitical. They are not supposed to be siding with any political party. So they try to do things in a constructive way. I understand that. I do understand that. But however, I do believe that the chambers of commerce should be a lot more vocal than they are right now. But you see, when we see what happened to Gabriel Faria, who was the former CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce and Industry, when he was on a private chat speaking about the Prime Minister and the government, and of course it was in a negative light, somehow the Prime Minister got wind or saw that chat, and the Prime Minister put a scathing attack on Gabriel Faria on his Facebook page, and all of a sudden forcing Gabriel Faria almost into an apology. For what? But I understood that Gabriel Faria was put under pressure. I understood he was put under pressure by the Chamber of Commerce, by members of the Chambers of Commerce. And that is sad. That is sad that we've reached a point where the intimidation of our government has now forced a very intelligent man, a very hardworking man, into having to form an apology for something he said in a private chat that was not official, that had nothing to do. And that is the genesis of where people started becoming afraid and concerned of victimization coming out of this government. And one only has to see the levels, the amount, the way in which they have trampled on our constitution, the way in which they have taken independent offices as high as the president and put politicians in that role. That is frightening. When the collapse of the Police Service Commission happened, where there was an interception of a merit list, and a police commissioner who's supposed to be a police commissioner didn't get the job, and we now see 623 murders in 2024. When you see those type of decisions being made, I don't blame businessmen for being afraid. They want to protect their businesses.
Well, Senator, this is where we will end it, but thank you very much for your time this morning on the program and for expanding a bit on these issues that are happening. I mean, it's good that these businesses, these SMEs, will receive $691 million by January 31st. But at this point, well, let's hope that they do receive it by January 31st. We're supposed to receive it in December. 1 month later, we wait.
Well, let me just close with this. He said 6,000 will be getting it. It's an election gimmick. What I want to know is, what about the 6,000 businesses that shut their doors after the COVID pandemic? What happened to those companies? Little too late for them. They've lost everything.
Senator Elijah, thank you very much for your time this morning. Take care.
Thank you, Keaton. Thank you. Very happy to be here. All the best.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime. We will return shortly to continue this morning's discussions. Stay with us.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us. We're now turning our attention to Tobago, in particular, focusing on the state of emergency impact on the island's tourism products. Now, when the state of emergency was first announced, stakeholders across the island sought to give the reassurance to visitors that Tobago remains a welcoming place, Tobago remains a safe place. However, with the 3 weeks now actually into the state of emergency, what has the repercussions, if any at all, been like for the product on the island? I'm joined this morning by the Tobago House of Assembly Secretary for Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Tasha Burris. Good morning, Secretary, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you so much. Good morning to your viewers far and wide, Trinidad, Tobago, rest of the region, rest of the world. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much from the gem of the Caribbean, as I like to say, coming across from our sister island of Tobago. Secretary, the reassurances were given. Tobago is still a welcoming, still a safe place. However, sometimes words don't do enough. In the instance of Tobago, following the announcement of the state of emergency, what has been the immediate impact upon the island's tourism product?
Well, certainly there was concern, and that was the first reaction, concern being expressed by our international partners, especially those in the UK and the US, because following the state of emergency, we did have the 3 negative travel advisories being issued against Trinidad and Tobago. So we've declared a state of emergency, and then the reaction from the international community was to issue these 3 negative advisories. So obviously, the first thing that we did was get in touch with our international partners, and they would be concerned, obviously, as to the impact of that in terms of this is our peak travel period for international visitors. This is the peak of our booking period for winter season. Winter season starts essentially from November, and it extends until April. So when the state of emergency was declared on December 30th, this was in the middle of our booking window for the rest of the winter period. So our partners in our international markets would express concern as to the impact that that would have on people booking packages to the destination. Obviously, our smaller operators would be concerned about people who would now cancel their plans to travel to Tobago and the impact on their businesses, because you have to understand that the tourism sector is made up in Tobago of a lot of small actors, small hotels, small guest houses, tour operators, tour guides, reef boat operators, and that one cancellation certainly will impact their bottom line. So for us, it's all about being very proactive in terms of, one, communicating, because in the absence of information, anything can go, and you don't want people to be running with a narrative that is negative about the destination, and then too much damage is done. We learned a lot of lessons from the oil spill. We learned a few more lessons from the shark attack earlier last year. So that we have some systems that we activated immediately behind the scenes once we got the information of the declaration, and immediately reached out to our international partners to assure them that this state of emergency declaration has more to do with treating with internal security and treating with some situations that have arisen that have drawn the attention of the national security apparatus. It does not necessarily affect the island of Tobago. You would see some enhanced security measures as per the norm when these things happen, but by and large, the destination still remains open for business, still remains welcoming to visitors, and still is a safe place for people to visit.
In that regard, what has been the response from external stakeholders to the reassurances that have been given on your division's part?
So I can tell you that some of the smaller operators did experience some cancellations in the beginning. And I think that that was more of an emotional reaction, because you have to understand that a lot of the tourists that come to Tobago from the UK, the US, Canada around this time are very elderly persons. So naturally, they will look at the news, they would hear things happening. And as older persons, they would be very concerned about their safety and security. But by and large, what we have found is that we have not seen this slowing down in the domestic side of things, which is good, because domestic tourism is one of the pillars of our product. And certainly we're seeing our Trinidadian counterparts visiting Tobago in droves as they normally would. And in terms of our international visitors, after the initial concern has worn off, we have seen that some operators have seen, things level off. They have not had any more cancellations. So there's some mixed things happening in this space. Some persons may experience persons wanting to change their mind in terms of when they want to travel. But every time someone reaches out, we want to assure them that, you know what, even if you don't want to come now, we will still preserve your booking. You can come later in the year. Or, we're working with our partners, we're working with our customers, we're working with our visitors. Because the idea is that we don't want what is happening in this space now to prevent them from ever visiting Tobago. So it's really about just managing each situation as it comes on an individual basis. And I said, communicating across the board with our international partners that, as I said, Tobago remains safe. And not only that, about a week and a half ago, we had a meeting with our actors in the national security space, TTPS, TTDF in Tobago, TIMA, and all of these personnel, to see how we can also do our part and how they can do their part in also assuring visitors that, this action that is being taken is really to treat with some situations that are happening on the local front, and to make sure that when our visitors come into the space that they are comfortable, they have access to information, and that if there are any incidents that take place, that we are handling those incidents as well.
So cancellations have plateaued, it would seem, from the initial onset in terms of the reactions. What about bookings? As you mentioned at the beginning, this really is the busy period for Tobago. I mean, it's winter months across Europe and even parts of North America. But in that regard, have you also seen bookings plateaued, or is there upkeep, or should we say the average that is expected at this time?
Well, it's too early to tell, because, coming out of December, 3 weeks in, you had persons who booked before. And the average length of stay for persons who are coming in from the UK is something like between 14 and 21 days. So we wouldn't be able to tell right now what the statistics are in terms of where the bookings are at. And as I said, what is most important for us is communicating with our partners and saying to them, look, you can still sell packages to Tobago, because by and large, the destination is still safe and open for business. So we would be able to give a better idea of what happened in the January window, because the impact would be felt in this January window when that booking period is finished, and it's not finished. So I would not want to preempt that information that I would get later this month. So our hope is that we have done enough to be able to assure persons in this space that Tobago is still the gem of the Caribbean, as you put it, and that we're still open for business. And that is what we're going out with, the more positive aspects of our tourism product. Because, for example, we have not recorded negative incidents against international visitors in a very, very long time. In fact, the TTPS indicates to me that we only had one negative incident, or one negative situation that was reported to the police last year that involved an international visitor, and that was a breaking in, and they did apprehend the suspect. But outside of that, by and large, we have not received any negative reports about crimes against visitors in a very, very long time. And that is what we want to remind people of, that Tobago still remains this very safe destination. And regardless of what is taking place at the level of national government and national security. The only thing that we've really asked people to do is just make sure that once you're walking or once you're going about the island, make sure you have your ID. So just in case, you end up in a roadblock and police officers or members of the defense force who will be out as part of joint patrols, they ask you to identify yourself. You can provide that information. And these are things that happen across destinations. It's not, unique to Trinidad and Tobago. So for us, it's all about ensuring that we have the systems in place to make sure that whenever our visitors do land on island, that they are taken care of as per usual. And if anything does happen, that we have a system in place to deal with that.
Surely that those reassurances that are being given become more and more difficult given what Tobago experienced last year with the level of criminal activity. And though you've indicated that that has really been more so internal issues and domestic issues, surely the tourism industry is needing a lot more than just words of reassurances following what Tobago experienced last year.
Well, you see, the thing is that our stakeholders know exactly what they are in. So it's not a situation where they're clamoring for the government to make some interventions or things like that. And they know by and large that the places that we operate our tourism product in Tobago are very, very safe, almost relatively safe spaces. And that the places where criminality is taking place on the island are confined to specific communities. And the interventions that have to take place in those communities are taking place at a local level through the Tobago House of Assembly, and they're also taking place at a national level through the central government. So, I mean, a lot of what the actors are requesting in terms of assistance, more than reassurances, is not necessarily related to the aspects of crime and criminality. The things that they would like to see happen in the tourism sector is more foreign direct investment. The airport is coming on stream, but what next? Who is responsible for bringing those flights in? Yes, the Tobago House of Assembly has a responsibility for transportation, but we don't have a responsibility for the airport that is being built. We have no input with respect to the airport that is being built. That is a central government project that is being managed under the Airports Authority. And except that we have a good relationship with the Airports Authority and central government where that is concerned, a lot of what is taking place with that project, we are in the dark about. So when the airport is built, who is bringing the flights? Who's paying for flights to come? Because there are different things that have to happen in order for planes to fly. Civil aviation, what is happening with existing applications for persons who want to fly into the destination? How are we marketing the destination from that standpoint? So those are their concerns. They have further concerns about things like the reserve capacity. Hoteliers during the COVID period were asked to pay the reserve capacity that is levied by TNTech, even though their businesses were shut down, even though nobody was in the hotel, even though they were not generating income. And that when we came into office within the first year, we had to pay millions to settle some outstanding debts on behalf of hoteliers because of that reserve capacity rolling over and the arrears in those payments. And there was no decision taken by central government to suspend the reserve capacity, knowing fully well that these hotels were not open and operating. So their concerns are more of a business side and not necessarily with respect to crime, because as much as we do have the benefit of having international visitors come into the destination directly via BA and Condor and CAL to a lesser extent, we have such a very strong domestic product that you have some actors in this space who have very high occupancy throughout the year. Castara is an example of that. So where they want to see interventions taking place, it's not necessarily too much a concern about crime and what crime does, but rather interventions on the business side that really can be done by changing policy at the level of central government.
Coming back to the immediate reaction, during that Security Council stakeholder meeting on January 9th, you indicated that the Visitors Relations Unit was being really activated. Is it in full function now at this point as we speak? But beyond that, could you kind of explain exactly what the unit is and what its function, its role is intended to be?
So in what we do have in place right now is what we call a promotions unit. And the promotions unit was actually created to help promote the product. So we would have personnel at our different offices, at the airport, at the port, and the promotions unit would be seen in different events and different activities across the island, both Tobago and Trinidad, and providing support to our companies to help promote and grow the tourism product on a domestic front and an international front. What we now want to go to is a visitor relations unit. So we're not just promoting the destination, but we're talking about a visitor experience and being able to manage that experience from the time you hear of the destination, the time you land in Tobago, to the time that you leave. So the idea behind this unit, and there's some elements of not just interactions with visitors, but PR and protocol and international relations, because you would appreciate that we have a number of persons who come into the destination who are not necessarily native English speakers. So these would be persons coming from Germany. These would be persons, especially when it comes to our cruise ship product, we have found that we've gotten a lot of Spanish-speaking visitors from Puerto Rico and other Spanish-speaking countries. We've gotten a lot of visitors from French-speaking countries. We've even have started to get a lot of visitors from Italy and Russia and some of these countries in Europe. So the idea of the visitor relations unit is to pull all the resources that we need to be able, as I said, to help manage the visitor experience from the time they land in the destination to the time they leave. So we have started building out the unit. We have our international protocol relations personnel who is right now taking charge of spearheading the work that has to be done to build out the unit. We do have the personnel already. It's just about getting the resources together. And those resources are not necessarily resources that only reside within the division, but it's about ensuring that there's touch points across the Tobago House of Assembly. So just in case a visitor comes and they get ill, what happens? How do they navigate our healthcare system? You know, once we get the report of somebody getting ill, we immediately know who to pick up the phone and call it at the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. We know who to call at the TRHA. We know in terms of where they are staying, in terms of the hotel, getting in contact with relatives, making sure that when they go to the hospital, they have a seamless experience, checking up on them, ensuring that if there are challenges with respect to a language barrier, that we can ensure that there's a translator on site, you know, and really helping navigate them through any challenge or any situation that they may encounter while on island. Things like getting information. You may find that persons may not necessarily know what are the local numbers to call, activating a particular hotline so that if they have to report an incident that may not be criminal in nature, that they know to call this hotline and they can be attended to in a particular way. Things like that, those special touches that we can add so that we could ensure that we don't just talk safety and security, but we can actually demonstrate safety and security and care. That's the most important thing. So that ensuring, as I said, as soon as that they land, that we're able to manage their experience on island. So it's not just leaving it up to the hotels or a system, not just leaving them up to a tour operator, not just leaving it up to a concierge who may have booked their package, but making sure that the government has systems in place to be able to respond quickly and efficiently to any challenges our visitors may have, because you will appreciate that as a visitor, you just don't have certain information at your fingertips versus what a local will have. Locals have access to all kinds of information. You know who to call in case something goes wrong. You have your contacts in the hospital, or you have your contacts anywhere you might go, but a visitor does not have the benefit of that kind of support. So that our role with that visitor relations unit is to really step in and provide that support, whether the support is navigating a challenging situation, anything that might occur in the destination. The things that we take for granted are the things that they don't have information and support systems from. This is what we are trying to put in place.
Is this unit in any way at all intended to enact campaigns on the part of the division to try and counter any negativity associated with the state of emergency, or at least the reporting on the state of emergency?
So, you know, we don't want, and this is a lesson that we learned coming out of the oil spill, that, you know, because of the age of social media and TikTok, that official information has to go out just as quickly as anything that anybody else would put in this space. Social media has given the average person a platform. And what we found coming out of the oil spill was that there was more damage done to the reputation of the destination because of negative reporting than the impact of the oil spill itself, which we're still quantifying. But I can tell you that one of the first reports that our international partners got was that the whole island was covered in oil, that all of the beaches were covered in black slick. And this was because a person did a TikTok video. They sat in Scarborough. They saw the beachfront in Scarborough. They took a video, they created a reel, and they put a very provocative, you know, voice and tone behind it. And they put that out on social media. And As long as that is running and we are not putting out official information to counteract that almost immediately, when a post goes viral, it is very, very difficult, almost impossible to pull that back because people believe the first thing they see and hear. So that is why it is important for us to be able to be very, very quick and proactive in our response. And that is why as soon as we received that information, because it's not like if the Tobago House of Assembly was in the group chat when it was decided that the state of emergency was being declared, we woke up that morning just like everybody else in the public and found out about it. So because we had already had those experiences prior last year, we have a tourism crisis communication management team that encompasses our stakeholders, our internal comms systems within the division and at TTAL, and our international partners, representation from our international marketing reps, to be able to quickly respond to anything that we foresee can have a negative impact on the image of the destination. So definitely you would see us playing up the positives, and that is what we have to do. Because the reality is that if we let somebody else tell our story, it would not be a fair representation of what is taking place on the ground. So you would see us ramp up our campaigns. You would see us focus on, hey, Carnival is taking place. Tobago is the cool-down capital after Carnival. Come to Tobago to cool down. You would see us talking about all of the things that are happening in the space that we have planned for this year. We have the Tobago Rhythm and Soul Festival that is coming up in April, where Buju Banton is the headliner. We want our people to book and come and enjoy, so that we will be playing up the positive. But while we are playing up the positive, it's not our intention to bury our heads in the sand about the reality. The reality is that you have to chew gum and walk at the same time. So that at the level of the Tobago House of Assembly, crime is at the top of our agenda because we know how crime affects our communities. We just had a situation where the first murder in the year was a very, very young schoolboy, 15 years old, who was shot and killed. And when you listen to the backstory of how that happened, it means that we have to, craft some serious interventions at the level of our communities and our young people to prevent them from getting involved in criminal activity from a very, very young age. So while we have the actors in the space who are treating with that, the Office of the Chief Secretary, the Office of Community Development, Youth Development and Sports, the Division of Education, as a whole of THA approach, we are all concerned and we are all crafting interventions. But at the same time, tourism has to do what tourism has to do, which is to communicate to our visitors that by and large, we open, we safe, and that when you're on island, we will ensure that you are safe. And that is that's what we're doing.
Last aspect of this really focuses on the cruise ship sector. Tobago is set to realize less cruise ship arrivals this season as compared to last season. Now, there was a report in the papers indicating that 2 cruise ships actually canceled their port calls as a result of the state of emergency. That has since been clarified, indicating that they had canceled their port calls before the state of emergency was announced. But at this time, has there been any follow-up from the cruise ship sector in relation to the state of emergency on the island? You've given a lot of reassurances this morning, but any further cancellations in respect to cruise ship arrivals?
Well, no information about further cancellations. And, and again, it's important that the correct information goes out, and that speaks to the responsibility of the media to report the truth of what the situation is. The first cancellation was as a result of, there was a challenge with some of the cruise ship visitors being able to take up their cruise, and they were trying to work out that stuff behind the scenes, but it didn't work out. It was a significant amount of the passengers. And as a result, the call had to be canceled. And the second one, certainly the reason that they gave was not because of the state of emergency. So, since then, we have not received any information about any further cancellations for this season. And naturally, you would have a follow, because if you have a ship that has over 3,000 visitors that is scheduled to visit the destination and they cancel their calls, you're talking about tours being canceled, you're talking about, vendors who will have different things that they would prepare for these visitors. You have food, you have craft, and these kinds of things. Think about thousands of people deciding just simply not to travel, and obviously you will have some fallout. But I can tell you these things are very normal. We have cruise ship seasons every single year. I used to work at the port, so I know firsthand. For any number of reasons, you will have cancellations. for any number of reasons, you will have changes to the cruise ship schedule because ships have to divert. There might be a hurricane in the Gulf. They end up calling at your port of call. So these are normal things happening in the space of the cruise ship sector. So, in terms of fallout, it's not fallout per se because, cruise ship schedules can change at any given time. We don't have control over cruise ship schedules, and it's largely, a sector that the government doesn't have a lot of input in the sense that it's the cruise ship and the tour operators who bring the ships. We are the ones who ensure that the product on island is ready for when the cruise ships come. And, it's a sector that we're actually trying to encourage more actors to get involved in. Right now we have one main cruise ship operator, and that person is responsible for bringing in the bulk of the ships in the destination, both Trinidad and Tobago. And between the two destinations, Tobago naturally receives more cruise ships calls than Trinidad. I think that our number this year was about 40 calls. I think Trinidad is about 20. So that the ships naturally come to Tobago because, there's beach, there's attractions, there's different things to do, things like that. And for us, we continue to sell Tobago as, this beautiful, untouched, unspoiled, undiscovered destination. The cruise ships love Tobago. They love what Tobago gives. There are particular kinds of cruise lines that specifically want to call to destinations like Tobago because their passengers don't necessarily want to go in places where there are thousands of visitors. They want to feel as if they have the destination all to themselves. So there's a particular niche market of cruise ships that we sell destination Tobago to. But we continue to monitor the situation. And as I said, we continue to work with our partners to allay any fears that they may have. And, we are just looking forward to welcoming our visitors, whether they're coming by plane or they're coming by boat, to, as they say, the capital of paradise, the gem of the Caribbean, Tobago.
I love Tobago. So, I would encourage a lot more people to go any day
I
of
hope
the
you're
week.
coming for Bonjour.
I hope so too. But I love Tobago, so really, I really hope that the sector is propped up. It's good to know that that the domestic market thus far has propped up Tobago's tourism products, but we do hope that, of course, the international market takes over from that. But Secretary, thank you very much this morning for your time. Thank you for sharing that information. You mentioned a very valuable point. There seems to be a lot of misinformation for whatever the reason, but there is a responsibility from us all in relation to reporting on facts as per what is taking place. So duly noted, and thank you very much for that once more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Take care. Enjoy your day.
All the very best, and I hope to be in Tobago soon.
Yes, indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime. We will return shortly. I've been trying to find, there's so many long weekends this year. It's an ideal opportunity to make a trip to the beautiful gem of the Caribbean. We'll be right back.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Bobby, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner. Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry, "Uncle." They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with me. My next guest raised a very important argument. He says whether or not you are ready, Carnival is here and the fets are coming, so you better be prepared. Yeah, you still have some time, although I will tell you there are a number of fets from the time that tickets went on sale. They sold out almost instantly. And now I'm receiving messages and calls. Hey, do you think you can get tickets to this fet? Do you know anyone? So that's a good sign. But let's get into the conversation with that guest, board advocate for the TNT Promoters Association, Ms. Paige de Leon. Good morning, Ms. de Leon, and welcome to the program.
Good morning to you, and good morning, of course, to all of your viewers. Thank you so much for having us this morning.
Well, thank you very much for joining us indeed. What is the news coming from the association in relation to events, activities for the carnival season? I just had a conversation that focused on the state of emergency and tourism. Thus far, everything seems to be okay there, but in relation to carnival events and activities, are we experiencing anything negative associated as a result of the state of emergency?
So far, we have not. So far, we seem to have things happening as we are accustomed to them happening. We haven't seen any of the measures have an impact on the ability of event producers to host events. So that's a very, very good sign. And we are also seeing that there is support for this season from members of the public. So we are quite heartened by that.
Well, the news coming from the association suggests that there are an increased number of fets, between 300 and 400 are expected to be hosted this year. Wait, do we even have 300 to 400 days of carnival?
Let me clarify.
Please do.
What I said was that there are throughout the season, and remember that our season doesn't start in February. Our season would have started in some instances as far back as December. They have been carnival style events, and so I didn't say fets alone, it's events, because remember that in addition to the actual fets, there are also many concerts, there are showcases, there are street parties, there's all sorts of things happening around the carnival, ecosystem environment, like different things, live events, live concerts, live shows, showcase type things, parties, of course. So there are a lot of events, and it's not just the parties. So the headline spoke to that, but it is events in general. And so what we're finding, while there's an increase in number across the spread, remember, it's not just in Port of Spain, it's also in San Fernando, it's also in Arima, it's also in Point Fortin, it's also in Cedras, it's also in Sandy Grande, it's also, it's everywhere around the country that we're seeing these events. And what's happening now, I think, is not that there is necessarily an increase. The industry is changing, and now we are able to count the amount of events. We're able to have a better sense of what is happening around the country. Hence, we are able to give what I think is a more comprehensive picture of what the event sector really looks like.
Well, thank you very much for clarifying. I was not there when that announcement was made, so I'm relying heavily on the reporting from my other colleagues in the media. But still, that is good to note, so that we have between 300 and 400 carnival-like activities or events taking place, not just necessarily fets. But what about foreign relations and foreign investments in these fets? We have foreigners who are interested in purchasing tickets. Are we also seeing some sort of stability from that aspect, from that avenue, as it relates to purchasing these events?
Yes, we are. We have seen that there is the usual uptick in ticket sales at this time with those who are coming to our country for Carnival. So that is something that, as you say, you've used the right word, stability. There is stability, but remember that those are largely the ones that happen during the, sort of close Carnival week. There are some event weekends and some event periods when people do come to Trinidad from abroad to enjoy what's happening in Trinidad, but we are seeing stability during that week of Carnival. Yes, I can certainly attest to that at this point. That's right.
In that regard as well, and again, this is all positive to note. I mean, They say in Trinidad, the city will burn down, we jamming still. Now that's become
So
a
I'm
theme,
gonna
an anthem.
I had a conversation with somebody about that this week, and we jamming still. It tended to be something that was used almost as a jab against people who are choosing to participate in carnival, and really that is not what it is. Business activity has to continue, economic activity has to continue. We have to continue moving forward despite the challenges that we face. And I suppose that we jam in still being the joke that it is, we have to make sure that we are clear about the context it's used in when it comes to the economic activity that is carnival and events. So I just want to stick that one in.
No, I think you're very much correct in sticking that in because you're right. It became a negative connotation associated with very good things, of course. But I can't see why people would be upset for people participate, why others would be upset for people participating in Carnival. We have a season, it's all part of our culture, it's there to be celebrated. So I really hope that that really does not become a theme for this year's events because of the state of emergency. But in that regard, as well, moving forward, are there any concerns on the part of the association? Is there a need for clarity in respect to what is taking place with security, or even the association themselves giving reassurances to patrons as it relates to securities at events?
We have taken a position that our sector wants to be sure that everyone knows we have always invested heavily in security. Always. That has always been the case. It is the most sacred duty of an event producer to ensure that the person who comes to the event has a safe and enjoyable experience. That's a brand promise that Trinidad and Tobago's events have always lived up to, and we continue to do that now. We aren't, at this point, more so concerned than any other citizen would be about what is taking place in our country. We have engaged our stakeholders. We do have a meeting with the Commissioner of Police tomorrow, where we hope to have proper conversations about what we can all expect during the season. In terms of the association and the industry, as I said earlier, the industry is changing significantly, and one of the big challenges that we have faced, like every single other area of life, is the rising cost of hosting events. It has become very, very, very significant. And of course, because the cost of the events is already so high, there is a concern about how you match the rising cost with what you charge your patrons. So as an association and as an industry, we also have to continue to look at how we manage those rising costs. Now, every single thing that we use for an event has increased in terms of price. We're talking about our regular services like the scaffolding and the trussing, the cost of the musicians and the artists and the other practitioners, the people who make the costumes, the people who do the t-shirts, the people who provide the food, the security companies, the cleaning companies, the sound system providers. It has all increased. So the industry is changing, it's moving forward, but it's moving forward with challenges, and we are hoping that as we demonstrate a resilience this year in particular as an industry, insofar as we have been able to continue and to do well and to proceed despite a challenging state of emergency, which directly can impact on the perception that people have about their ability to be safe here. We're hoping that that is going to put us in a position where we can lobby for the sector to be seen as a tourism service provider, which is one of the first things that this association would have asked. We are a tourism service provider. We would like to be afforded the same courtesies as other tourism service providers, and the industry looked upon in a favorable way that allows it to continue and to grow and to encourage young people to come into the business and to do well, because it is good business. But we do have to ensure that the environment for that good business to continue to thrive is facilitated.
Exactly. You said it twice when you've indicated that the industry is evolving. Exactly how is it evolving? How is it changing or transforming year on year?
So one of the things that you'll see now is that there are a lot of collaborations between event producers. Event producers recognize that there is strength in putting their brands together. So there are many collaborations taking place between event producers and artists. You're also seeing many of the performers hosting their own events in the earlier parts of the season. This is also in an effort for them to enjoy some of the benefits of being event producers. One of the main reasons for those collaborations is, of course, cost. And people are pooling their resources together so that they can manage, and they're adapting and they're working with what they have. We also see that because there is global potential for these brands to do well, these collaborations make sense because it's a lot safer, or rather more comfortable, or comforting perhaps is better. It's a lot more comforting for brands to get together and pool their resources and leave Trinidad and go outside to do better. So those are the kinds of things. You're also going to find that the tone of the event changes. Some people are moving away from events that traditionally were part of the landscape. They're not in 2025. Some of them are also, changing and having new, different events. So you see some things moving ahead, some things not, and it really does depend on the environment. What can the market stand? What is the market able to accommodate? So those are some of the changes that we're seeing in the event sector. And of course, there is technology now that is completely transforming the way the industry functions and the way that it looks. So that's also an important indicator for us. How is technology changing the sector that we so love and making it better in many cases? If you look at some of the screens and the stages and the sets that are put up by the event producers, they're absolutely magnificent. It's technology that's allowing that. And what it means is that our offerings are becoming more sophisticated. That's another point that needs to be made when it comes to how the sector is transforming.
Now, in that regard, actually, just out of curiosity whether this has been discussed, an example outside of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to technologies is that the Cartel concert that took place in Jamaica also was televised via pay-per-view. Is that something that has been discussed by stakeholders with the events in Trinidad and Tobago, that possibility that it can be streamed or even, aired via pay-per-view channels for increased revenue for those who can't attend in person, or we can still participate via other avenues?
So that is something that has been done. It has been tried. I remember at one point, Soca Monarch, when it was in its first incarnation, that happened. I seem to have a recollection of Calypso Fiesta. Not sure if it was pay-per-view. It's been a while. I can't remember. But I haven't heard that particular conversation taking place when it comes to FETs. I do know that some FETs are streamed live. I am aware of that. But I am not quite certain that the industry has determined that a pay-per-view approach is a valuable one for them. I'm really not hearing that conversation taking place. But of course, we can talk about it. We can discuss whether or not there is value for event producers and for the sector in creating that. Remember, Trinidad is a premium product. We are the premier carnival product in the world. And so how much protection does one need to have to keep its product sacred? Do you put it on pay-per-view so people don't have to come and they have to watch it on TV? I think that's a real concern and something for us to, seriously consider.
Now, you've also indicated that there are challenges associated with rising cost. And how do you balance your cost with also, ticket sales and the demands from the public? Certainly, the cost has been reflected in a number of ticket sales this year. I mean, I've followed FETs for quite some time, from last year to this year. You are noticing an increase, and in some instances, a significant increase. Is the demand still there, though, for these FETs? They are becoming quite costly to host. Of course, is the demand being met to what is being given by promoters?
In some instances it is, and in some instances it is not. And so that's why you will see some FETs not being hosted this year. Some people just didn't make it to the party, no pun intended, in terms of being able to host their events. So whenever you have change of that nature, whenever prices increase in any area where you have a commodity, the market will tell you whether or not it is able to sustain your increase in prices. We would love to be in a position where we can negotiate much more effectively with our suppliers and with our state stakeholders to ensure that those costs remain stable so that we can stabilize our prices and the industry can continue to move. There's always a concern that some people have that perhaps some events price them out of that range, and that's a challenge. However, the environment is the environment, and increasing costs are a part of everyone's life. How do you, in fact, manage that when you have a business model that needs to work in order for it to continue? So it's a really careful balance, and it's challenging. We are seeing the demand, yes, in some cases, and in some cases not. And the principles of business apply. If we're not getting the ticket sales, we have to cancel the event. If we're getting the ticket sales, but they're not moving as quickly as we would like, we have to look at what it costs to get in. And all of these things are part of how the industry is trying to establish itself as a negotiating and a lobbying force so that we can have some control over how this type of element in the business model is looked at, and how it's managed and treated with, and how we keep it under control. We need to keep it under control because we need to have the industry. And if it gets out of control, we will have no industry at all. And no one will do well. No one will succeed. So we have to collaborate. We have to communicate. We have to work together to make sure that we can keep our industry alive.
Speaking of collaboration and the work that the association is doing, recently an event was held to announce Trinidad and Tobago's stake in the Global Carnival Alliance. Exactly what is that alliance, and what is the association's role in the promotion of such alliance?
So the alliance is essentially going to be, for the first year, a network of think tanks where we bring together all of the stakeholders, or as many of them as we can, in what has now become a carnival industrial complex around the world. I actually sat down before the press conference and I took out a map. Sorry, I took out a map and I counted on the map all the different places that I personally knew there was a carnival. I came up with 70. That was just my own personal count. That wasn't, an algorithm that picked them out. The algorithm doesn't know where all these carnivals are. That's 70 around the world throughout the year. We have 52 weeks in a year. That includes established carnivals from Notting Hill to Trinidad, as well as things like the Uber Soca Cruise. There's a Dream Weekend now in Dubai. There are various carnival weekenders cropping up all over the place. In Paris, in Portugal, in Ibiza. There was a soca festival in Brazil just this weekend gone. So there are tons of carnival-style, Trinidad-style events around the world. These carnivals all have stakeholders. These stakeholders are economic stakeholders. They are mayors, city councils, governments, private individuals, associations. So we want to bring all of these people together. We want to bring together the musicians who make the music that is the fuel of carnival. We want to bring together the event producers in all of these jurisdictions and have conversations with them about how we strategically grow, harness, and manage this product around the world. We want to employ in that conversation, in that think tank that we engage in, cultural sensitivity. How do we preserve the traditional elements of carnival? How do we ensure that the Caribbean population that is fueling and engaging these carnivals around the world benefit from what is essentially a massive move? And I used the word economic space. It's a great big economic space that we can inhabit, that we can harness, and that we can manage so that we have something that belongs to us, that is ours. We all know that our petrochemical wealth is, on the other side of its buoyancy. So we have to find ways to ensure that we can endure as a society. We are of the view that this is one of those ways.
Now, out of those 70 carnivals that take place across the world from your personal accounts. Coming back to a point that you made earlier, and I'm glad that you mentioned that this alliance really is full of opportunities in many very different areas. But in respect to those 70 events worldwide, you made a statement earlier. San Tobago is the premier place for carnival. Is that true in the sense that internationally we are really the pinnacle of what carnival celebration should be or is?
I think so. I think that has always been our reputation that Trinidad is the creme de la creme of carnivals. If you listen to the practitioners, and by practitioners I mean the artists, the event producers, the participants, if you listen to them talk about Trinidad and Tobago's carnival, and then you listen to the lyrics of the songs that are written as odes and tributes to Trinidad and Tobago's carnival, you will see that the product we have here really is superior. You will see that the best in class events are produced in Trinidad. When they come here, they come to see what we are doing. They come to look at us. They come to find out, how do I make my product better? What are the Trinis doing? We launched the season. When you have a season of phenomenal music, like what you have this year, which is all coming out of Trinidad, it means that the whole industrial complex does well throughout the year. It means everybody's working. And when I say
So we
people who
sorry.
influence globally.
So then we certainly have a significant role to play, an impactful role to play in this alliance.
Absolutely. It is really, really important that we have a conversation about what we're going to do. We're in a race against time to plan, to strategize, to get the thing to move in a way that we have some, direction with, because it's, as I said, it's 70 that I counted. That's just my own personal count. There's no data there except the data on the map. That's a lot. And that means, what it means essentially, and I think this is a very important point, what it means is that the model that we have generated organically in Trinidad and Tobago as Carnival is so attractive and is so successful that other people have literally taken it and plunked it down in their cities and decided this is a great way for us to make money. This is a great way for us to build community. This is a great way for us to, implant something that is indigenous and joyful and fabulous in our country and have a celebration. I think that's very, very, very important for us to understand as Trinis about what we have. If we understood more, we appreciated more, we accepted more that this is what we have, then perhaps we would treat it better. And we would have an understanding of how critical it is for us as a society to facilitate and to encourage and to support and to make the environment better for us all to thrive in.
Indeed, Mr. Leon, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thanks for joining us on the program. Good news as it relates to the industry. Of course, there are challenges, but from what you would have indicated, there is always a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And with continued stakeholder collaboration and hopefully soon the support that is necessary from other entities, well, this is something that we can all look forward to and celebrate. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Of course, good morning to you and your listeners. Have a safe, enjoyable carnival, everyone.
Indeed, and to you too. Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, on the screen, you have seen throughout the course of the interview that there are approximately 300 to 400 fests being hosted this year. Just a correction once more. That actually came from a report that I read, but thanks to Mr. Leon, she has just corrected that statement, saying that there are 300 to 400 carnival-like activities taking place, activities and events taking place, because the season does not start just from January 1st. It starts before that, of course. So since then, that is a point that needs to be made. So thank you very much to Mr. Leon for that, and of course for the conversation in its entirety this morning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we bid farewell for today. Thank you very much to all my guests for joining me on the program this morning, starting with the Opposition Centre, Damien Lyder, in relation to VAT refunds. SMEs are due to be paid, over 6,000 SMEs are due to be paid their refunds, hopefully by January 31st, according to the Minister of Finance. Then we spoke to Tasha Burris, the Secretary the Tobago House of Assembly Secretary for Tourism, Antiquities, Culture, and Transportation, and we just had Mr. Leon. But all in all, it's promising news, and that's something that we can certainly be proud of and hopeful of as well, that such promising news continues. Well, I'm Keaton Shaw, reminding you today is a good day to have a good day. On behalf of my entire team and Ryan Gomez, Berg Marwood, and Yumi Oknish, we wish you well, and we will see you again very soon for another edition of AM Prime. Have a great one. Take care. Bye-bye.
WESN.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.